A very bizarre police pursuit ends with several charges against this man, including drug possession, breaking and entering, and eluding police. It also involves our brave K9 Eiko and the stubborn suspect wading in the Mystic River. We have the very latest from Arlington Police headquarters. Changes are planned for the historic parcel of land near the Central Fire Station. It's an effort to honor those who sacrificed so much so that our nation might live. ACMi News talks to the town's Director of Veteran Services for an update. Tonight, we take a look back at Arlington's 34th annual birthday observance of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., as this town, and indeed the nation, turn Dr. King's words into action, learning once again that hate can never drive out hate. And we talk to an expert who wants the Massachusetts flag and Bay State seal changed. He also weighs in on the brilliant works of Arlington's favorite son, sculptor Cyrus Dallin. ACMi News starts right now.
From McLennan Park to Spy Pond, from Poets Corner to the Mystic River, we have Arlington covered. We're your neighbors, a friend you can turn to, giving you stories that count from people who care. Dedicated, determined, dependable. This is ACMi News.
A very bizarre scene involving a stolen truck, a police chase, and a soggy suspect unfolded in Arlington shortly after 1 p.m. on Saturday, January 15th. Hello, I'm Katie Chang.
And I'm James Milan. When it was all over, 30-year-old Joseph Collar of Weymouth, Mass. Was arrested and charged, but not before the suspect fell through the ice and plunged into the frigid waters of the Mystic. ACMi News spoke to Arlington Police about this unusual case and how it ended safely with a little help from a police dog and some alert Arlington residents.
Police say the homeowner came home to find the kitchen window open, and that's when they saw the male suspect walking through the yard to a U-Haul truck parked on a nearby street. Now, police officers quickly located and then began following that vehicle. Police say that's when Collar stopped on Carl Street, then fled the truck on foot with a female passenger. Police were able to take that passenger into custody, but the driver was not giving up so easily.
Someone spotted him down on the banks, trying to get away from the officers that were down there. He made his way under a bridge. He came back out, saw the officers, ran back down to the water, and we had multiple officers in the area, including our K9 officer with a K9 Eiko.
Eyewitnesses told police that Collar was in the area of River Street and that he had gone under the bridge. Officers then took a K9 with them as they gave chase, and according to police, Collar then ran onto the ice where he and the K9 following him, Eiko, fell through the ice and into the frigid water. Eiko was quickly called back by police, and at this time, Collar apparently refused orders to come out of the water. Even refusing to grab a safety line, police were constantly throwing at him.
They had him in the water, on the ice, and they requested him to come back, come in. He wouldn't come in. So multiple commands. Hey, listen, we're going to let the dog go. And so we let the dog go. But while he was making his way to the party, they both fell into the ice. I think about waist deep. The K9 handler, Officer Hogan, quickly called the dog back onto the shore, but before the dog even made contact with the suspect. And then after a few minutes, but yeah, you're right. He wouldn't take a line. He didn't want to come out of the water. We eventually were able to grab a hold of him and get him out of the water.
Paramedics from Arlington and Medford fire departments were on scene and immediately treated Collar for coal exposure. He was then released and brought to the police department for booking. Police say the ensuing investigation revealed that the U-Haul had been stolen, and they found what they believed to be heroin inside the U-Haul truck. Tonight, Collar faces several charges, including breaking and entering, resisting arrest, failure to stop for police, and also drug possession. Police say he had 4 outstanding warrants from district courts in Boston, Quincy, and Weymouth. The female passenger, meantime, was also taken to the hospital for an evaluation and later released. Police found she has 2 active warrants for her arrest, one in Worcester District Court, the other in Boston.
Luckily, everyone who was involved, including the suspects, they were all unharmed, and we were able to come to a good conclusion of this. These type of cases, I've seen them multiple times through my career. I also, when I was in college, my home was broken into, and they're serious. They really affect people. I remember my mother wasn't right for months and months after this kind of a crime, and I was working with the K9 officer, Officer Hogan, over the weekend, and he had mentioned that he had a conversation with the victims and even their children, in a way, kind of talk them through it, that we're still always out there protecting them and what have you.
Arlington Police Chief Julianne Flaherty commended Arlington Police, who she said drew on their extensive training, experience, and professionalism in bringing a very safe conclusion of what could have been an extremely dangerous case. Police also want to thank the several bystanders who had a visual on the suspect at various times, which obviously greatly helped assist Arlington police officers in locating and then ultimately arresting the suspect. For ACMi News, I'm Jeff Barnes.
Collar's bail has been set at $1,000. Judge David Frank ordered Collar to stay away from the alleged victims in this case. Collar's next court appearance is set for February 9th.
After that story, you can't say police work is dull. The Arlington Police Department is once again announcing their recruitment drive, and they're looking for a few people wishing to protect and serve this community. If you're looking for a future in law enforcement or a career change, Arlington Police would like to hear from you. But first, you must take a civil service exam. The deadline to take the test and submit your application was set for Tuesday, January 18th, but don't worry, if you miss that date, you have a grace period until the final deadline, which is February 1st. The civil service exam costs $100, and you'll have to pay a late fee of $50 if you're aiming for February 1st. Arlington's PD says women, minorities, and veterans and people with disabilities are encouraged to apply. To get more information, interested parties may visit mass.gov/civil service. Again, if you want to be a part of Arlington's police force, just go to mass.gov/civil service.
Arlington will be able to recoup millions in revenue loss using funding from the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA. This, according to a final rule issued by the federal government this month, which changes the way those losses are calculated. That comes as good news to Town Manager Adam Chapdelaine, who told me communities like Arlington can now claim up to $10 million in revenue loss to be spent as the town deems fit.
So we'll be able to use up to $10 million of the $35 million allocation to basically help the town's general fund and to support the taxpayer. So that means we will have to edit the framework that we've talked about so many times on this program and at select board meetings and in other venues. So I'll be doing that over the course of the next few weeks. We'll bring that to the board, likely on January 24th, maybe the first meeting in February, to make some revisions to the framework so that we can maximize the benefit to the taxpayer, while also still, I think, making very significant investments in the various categories that have been part of the framework all along.
So it sounds like very good news for us out here in property tax land, and more work for you. Good luck.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good news. It's good news that will lead to me having to tell very worthy causes that they're not going to get to spend as much money on those worthy causes. But ultimately, I think as we try to keep a stable budget year over year here in Arlington, it's good news in that regard.
You'll recall Arlington initially received roughly $35 million in ARPA funding. To find out more about how the town is dealing with the pandemic economically, just go to arlingtonma.gov/ARPA. Again, that's arlingtonma.gov/ARPA.
Arlington officials are currently exploring options to add some more green space to Arlington Heights. Earlier this month, a public information session was held to give details on renovating and expanding Poets Corner Park near Route 2. Town leaders say the plan depends heavily on the availability of land adjacent to Poets Corner, which is currently owned by St. Camilla's Church. Discussions are underway to possibly combine the existing park with the parcel of land owned by the church. Poets Corner currently features a baseball diamond, basketball court, and playground. Town officials point out this plan is in the preliminary stage and would have to go through a number of approvals by town government and St. Camilla's Church. Belmont Hill school leaders have also expressed interest in possibly becoming in as a primary investor in this plan. Town leaders have long said Poets Corner is one town park that is in dire need of attention.
You'll recall ACMi News told you about the first wings of the new Arlington High School scheduled to open next month. And once that is complete, the next phase of construction to the new high school begins. We told you about the AHS Building Committee hosting a virtual forum last month to lay out exactly what students and their families can expect as they move into the new classrooms. The first wings of the new high school are set to open after the February break, followed by phase 2 of construction, when town leaders say the auditorium is set to be finished by April. The second virtual community forum is set for 7 p.m. Tuesday, January 25th, and will be aired right here on ACMi. Town leaders are expected to give an update of what Phase 2 construction will entail. This month's forum will be aired on ACMi's government channels, Comcast Channel 22, RCN Channel 614, and Verizon Channel 26. A recording of this latest school forum will also be posted on the AHS project website at ahsbuilding.org.
Even though it had to be celebrated virtually, it clearly did not disappoint. Arlington staged its 34th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Birthday Observance on Monday, January 17th. This year's event featured stirring speeches and music that reflected the lasting legacy of arguably the most influential civil rights leader in the 20th century. The Dr. Martin Luther King Observance was aired right here on ACMi. If you missed it, here's a sampling of the celebration, honoring the words and, more importantly, the actions of Dr. King.
Somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest for rights.
Night mobs us, putting the torch to all we love, judging us by the color of our yearning rather than the content of our beating hearts. But no, in this lucid dreaming, I, you, we declare no more. Promise ourselves never again. Refusing to stand by and watch the breath being choked from another dreamer, while someone, somewhere, turns fear into power, pain into profit, lies into a deadening sleep.
Dr. King understood that the civil rights movement is a collective effort that requires each of us working together to further change, no matter our age or our background. And he believed that to serve, we do not need to be rich or famous or powerful. No. As Dr. King said, we only need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. That is another aspect of Dr. King's words that stand out to me. The idea of love is infused in so much of his work, a belief and commitment that stands in stark and contrast to so much of what we see in our world today.
Talk about your kings of Gideon. Go on, you can talk about your men of Saul. Go on, yes, you can talk about it. Good old Joshua at the Battle of Jericho. That morning, Joshua did the Battle of Jericho. The Battle of Jericho. The Battle of Jericho. The Battle of Joshua. The Battle of Jericho. The Battle of Joshua. The Battle of Joshua. The Battle of Jericho.
This is a love that goes beyond the Hallmark card. This is a righteous love, a love that might be angry or protective, a love that confronts white supremacy and injustice, a love that is gritty and ready to confront evil in this world. May this love compel us forward, knowing we are better together, and knowing that another world is possible. Amen, and blessed be.
We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. I just want to do God's will, and He's allowed me to go up to the mountain, and I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land.
To see the celebration in its entirety, just go to the ACMi website, acmi.tv.
Arlington's Director of Veteran Services is already moving on plans to upgrade Memorial Park between the Civil War Monument and the Central Fire Station. Jeff Chunglo presented his proposal to the Select Board last week to completely renovate the park, and he's already raising funds to give these historic grounds a facelift. ACMi News spoke to Chunglo this week to get details on this ambitious plan.
It is an account that I had planned on opening down the road for donations specific for the Veterans Memorial Park. I had been working with a client here in Arlington, Catherine Adler, a 99-year-old female Marine veteran. She passed away just a week before her 100th birthday. She had requested that donations be made to Department of Veteran Services here in Arlington. So that prompted me to kind of step up the process to get that account established right now. So I have been receiving donations in her name, which is greatly appreciated. So we'll go through that process with the Veterans Council. We'll review the drawings, the renderings, sit down again with the drafter and review, revise, and update those. And then we'll begin a series of open public meetings to see what the veterans in town would really like to see in that park.
What would you like to see done? I know it's in the preliminary stages, but it seems as though you're focused on the War Memorial that's adjacent to the fire station by the flagpole.
Sure, yeah. So that's the existing honor roll. So I think there are a lot of elements that should be included in the Veterans Memorial Park that currently aren't there. So we have POW MIAs. So we have 3 MIAs from Arlington. We have Medal of Honor recipient, Gold Star families. So these are all things and elements that I feel should be included in that, in addition to upgrading the honor roll, because there are still thousands of names that have not been included, either from the original development and installation to the names that have been added since I think it was 1993. We'll look at all sources of funding, state, private, grants, et cetera. So, and right now I really don't have an estimate on costs, but I expect that would come fairly quickly.
Right, and that depends on what everybody wants and what they're seeking once everything is hashed out publicly and you have your meetings and with the veterans as well. Tell us about Catherine Adler. You told me about her last week, and what a unique individual. First of all, a woman, a Marine in World War II. That's unprecedented.
She was a remarkable woman. She had been stationed originally at the Washington Navy Yard doing clerical work, and she was hand-selected by the Commandant of the Marine Corps to serve as the first female Marine to render honors at Arlington National Cemetery. So that in itself is remarkable, groundbreaking. but she just had a great career. She talked highly of her husband, Mel, who was also a Marine. So after their service, they moved back to Arlington, and they remained in Arlington, for their lives.
What a unique couple. And that obviously gives you inspiration to make sure that these people are never forgotten. And we forever, every single day, thank them for their service and their sacrifice so that we all can enjoy the freedoms that we have today.
Sure. Yep.
If you would like to donate, all you have to do is give Jeff Chunglo a call at 781-316-3166. Again, if you want to take part in saluting Arlington's veterans, past and present, and help preserve our history, give Jeff Chunglo a call at 781-316-3166. You'll recall last month, Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey reintroduced his Protecting Community Television Act legislation to ensure community television operations like ACMi continue to receive the resources they need to inform viewers in communities where they operate. The senator says community television is the only modern-day town hall this country has left. There's no question our daily coverage of hyperlocal information keeps Arlington residents informed. But given the pandemic and information you need to know to stay safe, this act is needed now more than ever.
These critical community television stations are at risk. In 2019, the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, proposed a new rule that would change the regulations, and it will allow cable companies to shirk their obligations to the communities where they operate. Every single community in Massachusetts. Because you see, currently, local governments are allowed to require cable companies to meet demonstrated community needs by providing contributions that benefit schools, public safety buildings, and community television stations. Yet the FCC's proposal would allow cable companies to assign a value to public access channels and then subtract that amount and the value the company places on any other in-kind contributions it makes from the normal fees that that company owes. In short, the community stations are left carrying an unfair burden, an unjust burden, at a time when local newspapers and other sources of local information are struggling. Now is the time when we should be exploring ways to expand, not subtract, from ways that residents can learn about their communities. This access to information is worth protecting, and that's why I am reintroducing the Protecting Community Television Act legislation that would ensure that community television channels receive the resources they need to educate, to inform local residents. My bill will ensure that in this era of increased media consolidation and globalization, that the public, educational, and government channels that lift up local voices and air programming most relevant to you and your family's lives are preserved. The movement across Massachusetts and the country is growing and echoing this call. And together, we're saying loud and clear that community television must be preserved.
Senator Markey continues to be a chief advocate for community media in Massachusetts and across the nation. In a time where media centers face increased demand for services and a decrease in funding, the Protecting Community Television Act is a very timely topic of discussion on Capitol Hill.
Many of us are so focused on our daily routines, we hardly have enough time to ponder things we see every day. Take the Massachusetts state seal and flag, for instance. Both are at the center of a controversy that has already reached our state house. In the midst of all this, where does Arlington's favorite son, Cyrus Dallin, fit in with his work of art depicting Native Americans? ACMi's news director, Jeff Barn, talked to a UMass professor of history who says society's current mindset needs to be fine-tuned quickly.
Sometimes it's a little bit about public ignorance, might be too strong of a word, but lack of public awareness. Then you also have the issue of politicization. People get just too wound up with the history and they tend to lose perspective it's something in the past.
The Massachusetts flag, for instance, is very interesting. It comes about from the insignia, which I think came about, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Massachusetts Bay Colony, correct?
Yes, so the 17th century, which depicts a barely dressed Native Americans who is covered with some leaves, and then a speech bubble comes out of his mouth and it says, come over and help us. And I've been showing this flag or this insignia for years, for like 3 decades at this point, to my students, and they always get a kick out and they're like, ooh, this is bad. And so this is the root. We have had several insignia or state flags since then. But in 1895, there was sort of a reintroduction of a Native American themed flag in Massachusetts again.
Above the Native American on the flag, which seems less offensive than what you described, is a sword that, from what I understand, is kind of indicative to the kind of weapon that the Pilgrims used, Miles Standish used, he being the military, I guess, officer, director of Plymouth Plantation.
Yes.
Do you find that disturbing?
Yeah, I mean, the current seal is disturbing for other reasons. Edmund Garrett, who designed the seal, put a lot of thought in the way he designed the seal. And he used the sword, even though the sword is not a Puritan design, it's like bended. So that's a later design because the whole outside of the flag was like reapplied from a different seal. But the sword above the Native American hat is very disturbing because the handle of the sword is based on that of Miles Standish. But also when you look at the body of the Native American, so the body itself is based on that of a Native person who was unburied in Winthrop, Massachusetts. But the head that Garrett used was that of a model from Montana in the 19th century, or for somewhere out west. So there's different claims. Some say it's based on a model from an Anishinaabe model from the Midwest. The other claim it's a model from Montana. But to make matters worse, you have like this disjointed, like Frankensteinian, as some people call it, like head on end, and you put the sword above it. And I understand some people say, yeah, well, but it's a military hold that doesn't necessarily mean it's cutting it off, but it's just bad PR. I mean, any company that would be stuck with a corporate logo like that, they'd be this fast in changing it. And sort of, yeah, go ahead, sir.
No, it's very interesting because, why not use a model of a Wampanoag, a Native American, or Penobscot, or Narragansett? Why are we going all the way to Little Bighorn? It makes no sense.
Well, in the 19th century, what people in Massachusetts and all over New England really had convinced themselves is that the local Native American populations, through their intermixing with people of African American descent, of white descent, had ceased to be pure Native Americans. Now, this is the idea of like scientific racism, racial purity, which kind of ends up these moronic ideas in the Nazi concentration camps. And I'm not like making that parallel, but this is sort of the thinking that goes in there.
Now, in Arlington, we have the Dallin Art Museum. Cyrus Dallin, one of the foremost sculptors of American history. He did Appeal to the Great Spirit, which is the huge statue, a Native American statue in front of the Art Museum in Boston. We have what's known as the Menominee Indian or the Menominee Hunter. And it's caused, I'm not going to say a brouhaha, a minor controversy. At least it's provoking discussion and may make a positive step forward in learning about our true, not propaganda, true history. No Spencer Tracy Mayflower adventures,
I think as a society, we need to have more discussion on issues, and it needs to be informed, and it needs to be without yelling at each other. And I'm afraid that sort of this kind of stuff also gets hung up in the culture wars that we've been fighting for quite a few decades, but a discussion that has become really, I use the word nasty.
It's a good word.
In the last 4 or 5 years, probably earlier than that, but it's become really out in the open.
Governor Baker appointed a panel to research the history of the seal and flag to see if our state symbol needs an upgrade. Committee recommendations were due last October. Professor Strobel says that they have yet to be submitted and is unclear when they will be. To see this interview in its entirety, just go to our website, acmi.tv.
And that'll do it for this week's edition of ACMi News. Thanks for joining us. I'm James Milan.
And I'm Katie Chang. Have a great night, everyone. Stay safe and stay warm.